part created by Godfrey Ludlow. Don Amazo's interpreter was played by the late Colonel C.T. Davis, also well known to listeners of those days as Old Man Donaldson. Don Amazo's stories were written by Colonel Davis and Malcolm LaPrade. The interpreter related incidents from the life of Don Amazo, who would illustrate these stories with melodies played on his beloved Stradivarius. And now, let's turn back to the year 1926, a long time ago in radio, for a brief memory of a program you loved, Don Amazo.
I have often told you of Don Amazo's boyhood days in the old city of Granada, and how he used to slip away from home to visit the gypsies of the Albaicín Hills. The gypsies liked young Don Amazo and taught him to play many of their old tribal melodies. Don Amazo has suggested that I tell you of his first experience in buying a donkey from the gypsies, just in case there happens to be a gypsy camp in your own neighborhood. Now, this particular donkey belonged to the king of the gypsies, and His Majesty assured Don Amazo that the animal was unique in all the world. It could read. Well, Don Amazo saved his money for months, and at last the bargain was concluded. He hurried home with his donkey and placed a book instead of a bunch of carrots before the astonished animal. Not a brain, not even a snort. Don Amazo hurried back to the Gypsy King. See here, you've lied to me. This donkey can't read a word. I held a book before his eyes, and he said nothing. Of course not, said the Gypsy King. But you told me he could read. Oh, that he can, said the gypsy. But I forgot to tell you, the donkey cannot talk. But after all, it didn't matter, says Don Amazo. I had to have some good excuse for going to the Gypsy King's hut, and buying a donkey served very well. The real reason Don Amazo went so often to the Albaicín Hills, well, I think a pair of flashing black eyes and lips like rosebuds, but that's another story. Perhaps Don Amazo will permit me to tell it to you someday. Now Donna Mazo asks me to say, buenas noches, amigos. Good night, my friend.
Thank you, Godfrey Ludlow. It's a real pleasure to hear Espolita played again as only you can play it. That Donna Mazo was a program. And many thanks to Malcolm LaPrade, co-author of Donna Mazo, who supplied us with the material you heard. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for a really big moment. May 9th marks the 10th year of regular appearances on the air for a comedian who is unique in the history of radio, Jack Benny. As a matter of fact, Jack will be honored on this anniversary at a gala banquet this Friday night. I had the honor and pleasure of being the announcer on Jack's first commercially sponsored program. And our orchestra leader, Ernie Watson, was saxophonist in George Olson's orchestra, which appeared with Jack on that show. And that's why we think it's particularly fitting that Behind the Mic helped Jack celebrate his anniversary. Now, after a 15-second interval to make the switch, we take you to Hollywood, California, where Don Wilson will interview the one and only Jack Benny.
Thank you, George Hicks, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As George has already told you, Jack Benny will be honored on his 10th anniversary in radio at the gala banquet this coming Friday night, May 9th, at the Biltmore Bowl of the Biltmore Hotel here in Los Angeles.
Gee, I'm nervous already.
Since Jack is one of the very few radio stars who can point to such a record of achievement, it is only fitting that he should appear on today's broadcast of Behind the Mic. Both Jack and I have just left rehearsal for today's Jell-O program, and while the cast continues across the hall, we've come over here to this little studio to take part in Behind the Mic for a few moments so that Jack can answer some questions about his career in radio, and I'll try to put myself in the role of a typical Jack Benny fan. First, Jack, here's a question that especially fits the occasion. Supposing we go back 10 years and have you tell us about your very first appearance on radio. What was it like, and was it a sponsored show or on the cuff like this one?
Well, Don, I went on the radio for the first time early in 1932 when Ed Sullivan, the Broadway columnist, invited me to make a guest appearance on his program in New York.
Do you remember what you said?
No. Oh, yes. I'll never forget it. Look what it got me into.
Well, let's hear about it.
All right, I'll give it to you. Now, just to illustrate how times change, particularly in radio, it was a little monologue affair where I walked to the microphone and said, ladies and gentlemen, this is Jack Benny talking. There will be a slight pause while you say, who cares? Now, that was funny then, Don. It may not sound funny now, but they screamed at it then. Anyway, I went on. I said, I am here tonight as a scenario writer. There's quite a lot of money in writing scenarios for pictures. Well, there would be if I could sell one. Even that. They even laughed at that then. Anyway, I'm going back to pictures in about 10 weeks. I'm going to be in a new film with Greta Garbo. They sent me the story last week, and it's a very novel idea. When the picture opens, I'm found dead in the bathroom. I hear? Now, they screamed at that, Don. Imagine 10 years ago. Anyway, I was found dead in the bathroom. I say it's a sort of a mystery show. I'm found in a bathtub on a Wednesday night. I should have been in Miss Garbo's last picture, but they gave the part to Robert Montgomery. You know, politics. The funny part of it is I'm really younger than Montgomery. That is, I'm younger than Montgomery and Ward. You'd really like Garbo. She and I were great friends in Hollywood. She used to let me drive her car around town. Of course, she paid me for it. Well, that was it, Don. That's what I said when I first went on the air. That was my first crack at radio.
Well, Jack, if you don't mind my saying so, it sounds a bit like a vaudeville routine.
That's true, Don. Don't forget that radio was unknown to me then, and I didn't know whether it was good material or not. I could judge only by stage standards, particularly vaudeville, where I had gained most of my experience.
What was the reaction to your first broadcast, Jack?
Nobody liked it but me. However, on the strength of it, I landed my first radio commercial just 2 weeks later.
Well, I don't blame you for saving the script as a souvenir. But tell me, Jack, when did Mary Livingston start her heckling career on the air with you?
Oh, she's been in my hair since June of 1932. But she did all right by herself before that in vaudeville.
When was that?
Well, about 12 years ago in New York. And it all happened because the girl who ordinarily worked with me became ill just before the show one night. Mary volunteered to substitute, and she's been working at it ever since.
I think that our listeners would like to hear something about the other members of the cast, Jack. Take Rochester, for instance. How long has he been with you?
Well, Rochester started with the program back in 1937 when he won an audition over 50 other contenders for the role of a Pullman porter. Just a bit part that we had written in for one broadcast only.
But it didn't work out that way.
That's right. He was so good that we kept him on for another week, then another, until he finally became a regular member of the cast.
Well, Jack, I'm often asked about the preparation of your program. How long does it take on the average?
Well, we never stop working. The schedule is something like this. After a Sunday night broadcast, I get together with Bill Morrow and Ed Beloin, my writers, and we hand over different ideas for next week. Then we meet early Monday morning and start working. That goes on throughout the week until our first rehearsal, generally held either Friday or Saturday, then rewriting Saturday night and Sunday morning for the actual broadcast.
You know, Jack, when Mort Lewis asked me to interview you today, he made a specific request that I inquire about your fan mail. He'd like to know about some of the odd and unusual letters that you receive each week.
Well, they are odd and unusual. Honest, Don, you should have my tinfoil troubles.
Tinfoil troubles? Now, what does that mean?
Well, you remember the program early this season when I talked about my collection of tinfoil?
Yes?
Well, ever since that time, Don, I've received letters by the hundreds containing bits of tinfoil to be added to my collection. Believe me, I must have gotten at least 30 pounds of it. And that doesn't count the letters asking me to give the tinfoil to various charities.
Well, Jack, no interview with you would be complete without a few words about your classic feud with Fred Allen. Now, did Allen make the first crack at you or vice versa?
Well, naturally, Don, he started it. I wouldn't say anything nasty. Well, here's what happened, Don. A few years ago, when Allen had amateurs on his program, a little 9-year-old kid named Stuart Kennan played the B on his violin. And when he got through, Allen made a crack that Jack Benny couldn't do that. He ought to be ashamed of himself. Naturally, I was wounded. So I let my nails grow and clawed back. And as many times I've given him a good scratching, I have yet to strike blood. Anyway, Don, that's how it started.
That has been going on ever since.
Yes, sir.
Well, Jack, we're just about through now, and as it's your anniversary, of course, you get the last word.
All right, Don. I just want to thank Mort Lewis for the invitation to appear on today's broadcast for Behind the Mic.
That goes for me, too, Jack. We now take you back to New York.
Thank you, Jack Benny and Don Wilson. May you both have many more radio anniversaries. Next week on Behind the Mic, you'll hear the story of how the National Broadcasting Company gets its foreign news by shortwave, as told by the head of NBC's listening post, Jules Van Item. We salute another program you loved, and we bring you more of the comedy and the tragedy and the glamour that are Behind the Mic. This is George Hicks saying good afternoon.
Behind the Mic is composed, or rather written by Mort Lewis. The original music is composed and conducted by Ernie Watson. This is the Blue Network of the National Broadcasting Company.